Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar with myself, Brian Morgan, Director of AR Product Marketing at Blackline. Before we begin, we wanted to cover off a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximum icon on the top right of the slide, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you are experiencing any technical issues at any point, please click on the widget for assistance. Cash application goes beyond being a finance process, and we want to cover that today. And from my experience and many experiences from customers since implementing the solution myself at Veolia, cash application can have a massive impact across a business. And it also provides an opportunity to be a catalyst for improvements right across the AR process and the working capital management in a business. The key performance indicators of an AR department or credit department are often made up of these three key metrics that you can see on the screen today. Cash, often measured by DSO or debtor days, age debt, which can be a real drain on working capital and causes lots of absorption of time and resource for the credit manager and the department, and bad debt, which is obviously sales that have occurred that are uncollectible. And these are the real key measures for any credit or AR professional, and really the measures that go up to the executive board when talking around debtors and cash flow. So why focus on cash application? I want to suggest this is an opportunity that often gets overlooked just because we see it as a process that doesn't actually raise itself to that executive reporting that we talked about in the previous slide. So why focus on cash? And I want to bring these three or four key points out in this slide that you can see. First of all, it consumes lots of resource. Cash application in many departments and in many organizations is actually being done by lots of people and impacts lots of costs, either from lockbox charges, overtime, additional FTEs at month end to be able to process the upsurge in payments that are received. I know some customers who receive 30 to 35% of their total monthly payments in the last 2 or 3 days of the month. So that impacts considerably on the resource available. It's a critical process. After all, we're talking around cash. And so control and traceability and audit trail is really important. And it's a critical process because it has a massive impact, not just on the cash application team, but the credit and risk teams that work alongside the cash team. And having that clear visibility of debt outstanding is essential. And then that allows the credit and risk teams to have confidence in the process, and they're not checking the bank statements for payments because the cash team is 1 or 2 days behind. And so they can actually contact customers for review for outstanding debts, or they can review the risk exposure, knowing with full confidence, with full clarity that they are making the right decision based on a true debt position. From a customer experience perspective, cash is a motive for everyone. So, and our customers expect the payments that they send to their suppliers to be updated and processed in real time and accurately. This, unfortunately, is not the case in many businesses today, where the process is still mundane and paper driven, and a process that is being done outside of the ERP solution, and the keying of data into the ERP. And obviously, results is vital in any department, in any business. And so we want to have a look at the input versus the output. And the results are a result of the actions taken or not. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the resource and our people, where do we want their focus? Where do we want their time being spent? Is it on simple but time consuming tasks like keying in data into the ERP from customer remittances? Or do we want them actually engaged with customers, following up and chasing the next debt that's outstanding and making those credit decisions that are so vital, especially at this moment, as we know the economy and our customers are facing severe challenges in cash flow. A bad process will beat a good person every time. And for many organisations, it's the commitment and the goodwill of our people that overcomes the bad process. And often for cash application, our experience has been that this is so true. It is our people and their commitment that overcomes the lack of functionality in ERP solutions that make sure that the process gets completed. But what if there is an opportunity to improve that process? The impact of the outcomes of a poor process, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, impact beyond the cash application team. You know, in our management of debtors, we put in processes in terms of suspending accounts if they go too late in their payments extension, or if their credit limit is exceeded. We actually put a suspense on the credit account that stops future deliveries, stops future orders being supplied. And that's good management. However, if that happens where those accounts are suspended, but the customer has paid, that can actually damage not just the process, but actually the customer relationship and engagement, could actually drive them to look for other suppliers, and it impacts sales and operations. And so this process that is seen and looked upon as a back office function is suddenly having a ripple effect right across the organisation. The wrong allocation of the payments, because our people are working hard, and especially at month end, to get as many payments processed as quickly as possible, causes error. Therefore, we end up with lots of amounts of unallocated cash because we don't always get all of the information at the point of receiving the payment. The remittance may come in the post or on email a day or two later. And that just creates lots of rework and cash going on suspense or holding accounts. Compliance is always a priority, and we've touched upon that, about having that traceability and referenceability of what's going on with all of the payments all of the time. Reporting is impacted in terms of timelines and accuracy because cash is put on the suspense account rather than the customer's account. And so month-end reporting of those aged debts and the aged buckets is inaccurate. And then we start off the month with a large amount of unallocated cash. And so we're always playing catch up in a process that is so critical. And the stakeholder management, as I've mentioned throughout this so far, it's not a process at the back end of that is just impacted. It is actually all of the stakeholders within the business, customer satisfaction, sales and operations, but also our staff, because all of those issues will cause problems for our team. So let's have a look at a typical cash allocation process that is done in many organisations today. We receive payments either by cheque or by electronic means through a bank statement. we receive the remittances and we file those in order. And then when it's an electronic payment and we receive it on the bank statement, we play a matching game between the remittances and the bank statement. I know from my own experience, what we used to do was print off the bank statement at 25 lines to a page and find those 25 remittances so that we had the information to then key the data into the ERP solution. And for most ERP solutions, you're talking around 5 or 6 screens that you have to go through for each one of those payments. Imagine if you're one of your cash allocation team members and you receive a remittance of 100 lines, 1,000 lines, and you have to key that data into the ERP solution. And that's after you've found the remittance to key that data. So that's really time consuming. It's really open for error. Even by our best efforts, that will actually be really open for errors to be made. And so, this is a real life example of how difficult. It's not so much the difficulty; it's that it's just laborious and mundane that causes the mistakes. And so something that is literally quite simple can become complex by the repeat keying of the same data day in, day out. You move on to the next slide, a slide then of a process that is using intelligent automation like the Blackline cash application solution and the benefit that it brings to an organization. So that the checks are scanned and it's directly into the solution, front and back of the check, and all of the relevant data is picked up. Remittances are then also uploaded into the solution, and then the matching that we talked about earlier is now done automatically by the solution itself, taking away all of that human effort, and it reads the data. And we take away all of those keen demands on our people. And I watch some organisations will use Lockbox or other third-party providers to do all of that keying data that can be uploaded into their ERP solution. We provide a different alternative that is fast, that is accurate, and can really make a massive difference to an organisation and to the credit team, and most importantly to the cash application team. If you look at the slide previously, we talked about a 30, 40, 30 impact. We're now talking around a 20, 10, 0. Think about the impact that this could have on your team. The other point to raise at this point is that many organisations, because of that audit trail and compliance, and the fact that we wanted to be sure of what we're allocating, have relied upon remittances to get this accuracy. In our customer base, we processed over 15 million transactions last year. We used less than 20% of remittances for those 15 million transactions to be allocated fast and accurately. So the real benefits of intelligent automation of a cash app. The return on investment makes it an easy decision. It's the return on investment that really is, for me, demands investigation. This is what you see on the screen is the outcomes of my own implementation of the Blackline cash allocation solution when I was the credit manager at Veolia. The cost of the process was justifiable in terms of the business case alone. We went from 16 people down to 3 people, literally within weeks. The overtime that was so relevant and prevalent, in this process stopped as well. And the month-end reliance of others was no longer required. But I said we would get 30% of our payments in those 2 or 3 days before month end. And the result of that is that I would move 12 to 15 people from those credit control or risk control activities and move them over to this cash allocation process. That was a real drain on resources, and move people away from their focus and primary roles. In terms of process improvements, we looked at the impact of, of that intelligent automation where we didn't need all of that manual effort, but it also meant that we were now the process was applying 80% of our payments within minutes. The team leader at Veolia always described it really great, I thought, is that she said that she would come in on a morning, load up the systems, download the bank statement, put it into the solution, into the cash application solution, and literally within minutes, she'd done 80% of the work. That is a game changer for any department, for any business. And there was no bottlenecks, not even at month end. And she said famously once that month end was now just another day. And because of that automation and because we were doing things fast and accurately, we eliminated rework and misallocations. And all of this with a full audit trail, a full traceability of what had been done. And so our auditors, we received some external and internal recognition of what a transformation that we'd received in this process. And in terms of people results, now people had real confidence in the process. That wasn't just the cash app team, that was also the credit team, who prior to implementing the cash solution, they would actually check the bank statements for 1 or 2 days, maybe 3, depending on how far behind the cash team were in allocating the payments. And so now they were operating in real time and real visibility around what the indebtedness of each and every customer on the sales ledger was in real time. And that allowed them to have focus on the activities that they needed to do, focus around contacting in customer engagements, focus around credit reviews. And so, the productivity, not only of the cash app team, but also the credit team, vastly improved with a significant increase in the number of outgoing calls, also meant a real impact on the cash collections. Unapplied cash was running between 15 to 20 million pounds at any one point, and that would have a spike at month end, often with cash being put on holding accounts so that we could do the month end close. Now we were talking, instead of millions, we were talking around thousands. And that was, as I say, the reason why we got such good feedback from auditors. And obviously, because of the automation, and we were allocating payments in real time, there was no backlog. That then created a wider impact. As mentioned, the productivity of the AR team improved the bank reconciliation. Instead of taking hours, it was taking minutes, because every payment we received was allocated in the same day. And that made a massive impact to the bank reconciliation, which previously we could have had 3 or 4 days worth of bank statements open at any one point, as we were always trying to play catch up. And the customer experience that we mentioned at the beginning was no longer a negative one, where we were slow in allocating payments and thus impacting accounts going on stop or suspension in error. We were actually in real time. So then that confidence to put customers on stop was being done, knowing that was the real time position. That was the benefits. But the real outcomes that made the CFO happy, the real benefit of why I would suggest that you need to review the cash application process is that it's an enabler for the AR department, for the credit department. In the 12 months following the cash solution being deployed, we improved our cash collections by £40 million, a DSO reduction by 8 days. We moved those 12 people away from those cash application activities and move them onto cash collections. And the team that was already in the cash collection team were able to have more phone calls going out, have more focus, more clarity around what needed to be done. And this was the impact. And because we were collecting more cash and we were collecting it quicker, that was a reduction in our age debt and therefore the bad debt provision. So this cash application project was not just impacting the process, it was impacting working capital, it was impacting the bad debt provision and therefore the profit and loss account. And it was reducing our operating costs so that we were able to absorb more work into the department with less FTEs than we would have needed if without any intelligent automation being in place. And then finally, the employee survey for the department was one of the best. And that's no surprise, because instead of always running from a position of being behind in the process, they were now actually contributing positively, and they knew that they could measure their own process and their own success rather than always feeling that they were impacting negatively the wider AR team. So that was a real game changer. But for us, as I say, the cash application project was a catalyst in our AR improvements, in those metrics around DSO, around cash collection, around the bad debt provision, and around bad debts, whilst reducing costs. So hopefully, I think I'd like to challenge you to do like what we see on the screen now. There must be a better way. Is there a better way to do cash application? Is there a better way, a better opportunity to review what you're doing and look at the Blackline cash allocation solution as a catalyst for your AR department? Bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way to come downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is a better way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think about it. You're busy. I'm busy. Everyone I know in business is busy. But sometimes we need to take a moment to just review. You may say that we are achieving automation today, Brian, but are you achieving it in minutes? Has your automation seen a reduction in costs? Maybe it's just today's the opportunity to just step back for a moment and review what you're doing and seeing if intelligent automation is the way forward for you, your department, and your organization. Quote from McKinsey to close. As macroeconomic conditions continue to put pressure on profit margins across sectors, cost productivity and unlocking new value are back at the top of senior management agenda. The question is, what else can be done? That's where intelligent process automation, like the Blackline cash application solution, comes in. We believe that it will be a core part of companies' next generation operating models.
Welcome to this demonstration of our cash application platform. Before we walk through a day in the life of cash application using the solution, I would like to provide a high-level overview of the data flows that enable the tool. As you will see here, the solution takes feeds from a number of areas. Firstly, payment information in various formats and from multiple sources: electronic payments, credit cards, physical checks, or checks via a lockbox service. These transactions can be processed from a D-1 closed file and/or an intraday file as required. Secondly, customer master information and open AR transactions are provided by the ERP in order to keep the cash application platform in sync with the ERP. Finally, in terms of inbound feeds, as and where required, remittance advices are processed electronically using OCR technology. A key component of the cash applications functionality is that we are not dependent upon remittances. More on this later. As frequently as you require throughout the working day, the posting and application activity is then transferred back to the ERP, replacing and replicating any manual keying that may occur today. In terms of flexibility and accessibility, It is a global solution which supports any bank, any currency, any ERP, in any country and for any language. Across our client base, anywhere between 75 and 95% of incoming payments are automatically applied to an invoice level, irrespective of their location or industry. Let me illustrate this point via one of our Power BI dashboards. You'll see that for the 29th of June, the client received just under 500 payments into their bank account, and the bank statement was processed automatically between 6 and 7 a.m. The AR solution was immediately able to automate 75% of the cash receipts to an invoice level and post these back to the ERP. The AR team then starts working on these exceptions from around 7 a.m, and you'll see that 91% of the cash is completed by 8 a.m. and 96% by 10 a.m. The following day, on the 30th of June, when month-end volumes increased significantly, the automation percentages were not only consistent with the previous day, but actually slightly higher. The team have absorbed the increased volume without any additional headcount and have still achieved the same clear-down targets. The cash application processes previously managed by a team of 12 are now managed by only 3 people, including during those peak month-end periods. Our clients using the AR solution managed payment volumes ranging from 30 payments per day up to 20,000. So now let's talk through how I would use the solution on a day-to-day basis to clear down those exceptions that we've discussed. In this screen here, I can see all of my outstanding deposits. That means all payments that have been received into my bank accounts or indeed lockbox accounts within the last 24 hours. I can divide this up by currency or legal entity so that wherever I am in the world or whatever my roles and responsibilities are, I can see the bank accounts and the lockbox accounts that I'm responsible for managing. I can see the date on which the file was processed, and I can see the number of transactions and their value alongside those exceptions that remain that the system is going to offer me some guidance and help with. Let's focus for a few minutes on our ACH and wire payments or our electronic receipts wherever they are in the world. In this case, we'll focus on US dollars. If I navigate into this bank statement, I can see all inbound transactions and a real-time status of those payments. I can see that 100 of those payments have already been fully applied by the system and interfaced back into the ERP. Of those that remain, in terms of those exceptions, the system is going to offer me some guidance and some proposals on how it believes the cash can be applied. I'm going to focus for a few minutes on those where the system deems them Intel available, which is to say that the system has seen the customer before, it knows which sales ledger account or accounts that the payment belongs to, but for one reason or another the system wants me to intervene and confirm that application. Common types of exception that fall into this pot are things like partial payments, elements of a discount that needs approval, or indeed an element of discrepancy or where the match available is not unique and there are more than one combination available. If I focus on some of these Intel available payments, I'll start with this small one for $34.86. We have an inbound payment on my bank statement, whether that's an ACH or a wire transaction, and I can see in the top right hand corner the value of that transaction. I can see the narrative and the payment information at the top here as well, and I can see that the client has not yet sent me a remittance advice to complement the payment. The system, however, having seen this payment before from this customer, is automatically presenting me with this sales ledger account, and indeed this sales ledger account only has one open invoice on it. The invoice in question is for $44.10, where I can see the payment that has been made is for $34.86. I can decide what I want to do once I've validated and confirmed that this is indeed the correct invoice. I can partially pay the invoice. I can write off the difference if it falls within a tolerance, or perhaps there's an element of discount that I want to accept as well. Either way, I am in control of what this application means and how it should be performed, and I can apply the payment within the system. Simple allocation on that basis. Other common examples that we see is where the customer's name on the bank statement is different to that of the sales ledger accounts. In this particular case, for a payment of $920.27, I can see a payment from Cambridge Police Authority, and again with no associated remittance advice. This time the system is offering me a customer's account called Anatune Limited, which on the face of it I may wonder, how is Anatune linked to Cambridge Police Authority? When I interrogate the master data, however, that sits beneath these invoices, I can see that Anatune LLC is paid for and linked on behalf of Cambridge Police State Department. So we see many examples where there is a pseudonym name on the bank statement against the sales ledger, but the system has remembered that from a previous match and is therefore automatically presenting me with that allocation. Of course, without the remittance advice, I don't want to go through and try and manually find the allocation because it will potentially take me some time to do that. But what I've got at my disposal here is a clever button called the Auto Finder, which, when I click the button, the system calculates that this is the only combination of invoices and indeed a credit note on this linked account to which the payment can relate. Again, this has fallen into my exceptions pot simply because this customer, in this case, has paid everything on their account, but with one exception. Perhaps this invoice has been forgotten about, perhaps it's in query, but either way, the system wants me to validate and confirm before we proceed. Once I'm happy, I again am simply clicking Apply or Allocate. Taking that example one step further, we have lots of clients where there are multi-accounts across a sales ledger based on a group account, based on subsidiaries and a parent-child relationship. Taking that same theme where we have a payment from MAD with no discernible reference on the payment and indeed no remittance advice, we've got a payment here for $17,238. It's a very complex application, quite possibly, given the number of accounts, but immediately the system is presenting me with all those accounts in a single view. I can use my Auto Finder to calculate the only unique possibility. At this point I can validate with the credit controller, validate with the customer, or if I really want to come back and chase for the remittance, I can do so by skipping the payment and coming back to it a little bit later on. All the time I am in control, and as the system learns and as myself and my team learn, I'm understanding how these options are presenting them to me, and I'll gather that trust and that experience of how to use the solution. As you'll see there, we've applied a couple of payments as we've gone through, and there's a couple I want to still review. In many cases, we may still require the remittance of advice, and the system, where it has received and processed the remittance, will present me with this application option as well. To demonstrate the remittance process a little further, let me move out of this screen into my remit management screen. In here we have all remittance advices that have been processed by the system, whether they have an associated image and have been received over email, via PDF or another image type format, or indeed whether they're an Excel or a CSV type format as well. I can look at those remittances that are available for application, which means we've seen the payment, the customer and the payment before. The remittance has been automatically processed by the system, linked to all the invoices within the ERP, and indeed I have an associated image of that remittance which I can pop in and have a look at the document itself, which has been processed through our OCR engine. The remittances in question are kept within the solution for the period of our client's audit need, typically for 7 or 8 years, which prevents us needing to keep these documents offline in a network drive or indeed within an email server. Where there may be some exceptions or some discrepancies within a remittance, again the system will drive me towards these at a remittance by remittance basis. I can go and have a look at the remittance advice similarly to the way I did before, and I can validate and confirm in the case where perhaps there are partial payments that I'm happy with what the system has presented based on what the customer has provided on their remittance. I can apply these in multiple or in full, but all I'm doing is working on those exceptions to balance them back and make sure that when the payment is received, all I'm doing is a simple one-click allocation, or indeed the system may automatically apply it for me. You'll see here the remittance has moved to a status of available for allocation. The same principle as what we've just looked at here applies not only for ACH, wire or electronic receipts, but it also applies for checks or lockbox transactions. When I'm applying payments within my lockbox, The principles of the system are very much the same as previously, the only difference being that in this case, we more commonly have a remittance advice presented to us, typically as a check or remittance stub, or indeed via keyed or indeed an image-only service from the lockbox. When I'm applying the cash, I'm presented with exactly the same screen that we've seen previously, but I'm also presented with the check image and indeed the remittance advice if there's been one processed by the lockbox and indeed sent in by the customer. All of these images will support me in my decision on how to apply these exceptions. But as you see, from a percentage perspective, the number of those exceptions is very small based on what the system has been able to do for me. Once I'm happy with this application, all I need to do is interface the data back into the ERP, which I can do on a scheduled basis, or indeed I can do it on an automatic basis, and I can do it myself manually if I choose to do so. Within a matter of minutes, all of these payments will be posted and applied within the ERP down to an invoice level. So now let's turn our attention to some of our dashboards and our reports within the system. We have a number of reports that work on a system, operational and financial perspective and give me a whole raft of metrics on which to manage my team and my process. I've got reports that show me my matching rates, so it shows me by value and by volume the percentages that have been applied automatically on the one-click matching, or indeed perhaps manually by some of those exception principles. Of course, over time we would expect the number of manual matches to decrease and start to be absorbed by the auto match or the one click. I can start to look at some of my other exceptions and some of my applications to an invoice, to a customer account or to a suspense account to take control over my unapplied cash levels at whatever level of granularity I wish to do so, both at a payment, volume and indeed value perspective. I can also, depending on whether our client is a global operation, I can go in to understand by company code, by bank account or indeed by currency, the nature and the makeup of the system matching, which may encourage me to make some process or some operational changes, perhaps to support the data that the system is fed with, or to understand at a more regional or local level how the system is performing for me. Finally, from a read-only perspective, the system can be made available to credit controllers and other areas of the business where there is no limit on the number of users within the platform, so that I can go in and understand within my system how many payments have been made, when they've been made, by value, by currency, by invoice number, by account number, by a whole variety of different statuses. This becomes really powerful from a credit controller's perspective to understand when payments have been made before I pick up the phone and perhaps chase the customer for a payment that they have perhaps already made. It's just a matter of it being applied through the system. So hopefully you can see through this that there are lots of ways and lots of flexibility within the tool to manage and drive those exceptions, but also the power of the automation in terms of those high-level percentages that have been matched. That's all for today's demo. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If you would like to hear more and discuss your own organisation's needs for automated cash application, please get in touch. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Welcome back. I think that was a great demo. I always think it's really good to see how a solution works, and I think you can see that the comments and the what we were talking about previously is really at the touch of a button, a transformation in the cash application process. I'm pleased to say that I've got a customer joining us at this moment. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, my name's Tracy Bentley and I'm Head of Accounts Receivable for Atkins, which is part of the SNC Lavalin Group.
Thanks for joining us, Tracy. And perhaps you could start with a brief introduction around what was life like for your accounts receivable team and specifically the cash application process prior to using the Blackline cash application solution.
Well, we've had the Blackline cash application solution for approximately 3 years now. Prior to that, the annual allocations were quite manual. I mean, the team probably consisted of 12 individuals manually allocating cash. Unapplied was a bit of an issue. You'd got items that would take days to resolve, constantly chasing remittances. You didn't know what your customer was paying. So all a bit messy, really. Did look at the system prior to us implementing it, and we tried to build our own in-house solution. So it was better, for sure. It was just an Access database, but it obviously didn't work quite as well as this one does. We still had to use a lot of remittances, so still lots of manual login, messing about with bits of paper every single day. So certainly not ideal, but it was a little step forward until we actually took that big step forward.
Yeah. And the impact of the process, did that go wider than the cash allocation team?
There's no visibility of cash. So I guess previously it's directly sort of allocated within the ERP system. The collectors weren't directly using the ERP system, so they weren't sure what was in, what wasn't in. So if anything was on a promise, they basically have to hold it over for a few days extra to make sure that there was a feed through. So it was quite limited. I would say it certainly slowed down their productivity, and I don't think generally our cash results were as good then as what they are now.
Great. So when you made the decision to buy the Backline cash application solution, what was your target? What was your business case kind of built upon?
Well, I bit unfortunate that there was a team leader resigned, got another job elsewhere, and I saw it as an opportunity to convince the powers that be that we could again look at this system and it was absolutely going to pay for itself. We were also at the time looking at moving some of our processes out to Bangalore. So for me, I felt I could present them with a system that would not only pay for itself, but still give us complete control and visibility, because we still have to manage it from the UK. In addition to that, I could also give benefits from cash collections point of view, in terms of the fact that we would be able to make them more productive. We'd have a lot more visibility of our cash. We'd be able to look at a lot more at our clients' behaviour, how they pay us, when they pay us, what type of payment it is that's coming in. So you can basically track and monitor all of that. And I mean, bit cynical, my boss, when it comes to cash and systems, but I genuinely felt that I could show him that our cash receipts per month would significantly improve.
Right. So you've decided to buy the solution. You've implemented the solution. What was the impact? What was the results that you achieved from the process?
Well, it's been pretty amazing, to be fair. I would say the project itself was pretty seamless. You always have difficulties with banks. I'd say that they were the biggest challenge to start with at the beginning. But the project went really well. We went live with the system. The team were nervous, I would certainly say. Very different process. They're having to, you talk about artificial intelligence, and they don't believe it, quite frankly. So I think change is a big thing for anybody. But I would say very quickly they realised the benefits. We did a lot of testing, using our own data, so our bank files, our open invoices, to give them a level of comfort. We played around with scanning remits, processing checks, and it went really well. So I would say the team sort of adapted to the system quite well. The collections team loved it because they had full visibility of exactly what hit the file that morning. The cash receipts were on within 30 minutes, whereas before it could take days for the cash receipts to hit, just because of the investigation that was required. there isn't any investigation now. Perhaps a little bit if there's a non-sales item that comes through. But the cash goes in, the intelligence works out which customer it is, and quite often than not, it will automatically allocate to the invoices. Otherwise, you'll get presented with various options. So very, very straightforward. Since then, we have moved the team to Bangalore. So I've got a team now of 2 that allocate the cash. And I would say they do lots of other activities as well. So the system has more than paid for itself. Our cash receipts. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, what was the number of people involved in the process before?
Before, we had 8 people that would process the cash receipts. So we dropped 2 when we built our own access database, because it did slightly improve the process, but still quite manual in terms of remit management. And we still needed the remits, which was a big thing. So now we've got 2. I mean, you could actually do the process just with 1 person. You just kind of need backup and cover for holidays and sickness. So one of them is actually the manager, and he also looks after other stuff out there as well. So yeah, more than paid for itself.
You've touched on an important aspect there, Tracy. In terms of remittances, lots of customers kind of believe that you cannot do automation without the remittance. What's your view? What's your experience?
Well, back then, before the Black Line cash application, I was absolutely in the same place, for sure. It's quite nerve-wracking when somebody tells you you don't need a remittance to allocate the cash. It's like, well, how are we going to know where to put it then? How's a system going to know where to put it? I've been doing this job for years. How does a system know more than me where that cash is going to go? So we were really nervous, actually, and we had a brilliant project manager, and he stayed by our side, comforting and supporting us, whilst we watched how we were going to allocate the cash without a remit. So he said to us, within the contract, you don't want to pay for any more than 20% of your remittances to go through. And we were crying and cringing at that point. But I have to say, I guess we started looking at all the remits thinking, yeah, we've got to fire that one through. Whereas now, I'm putting this system now in Canada for our parent company, and they are in the same boat, and I'm telling them exactly the same. You do not need your remittances. We're not paying for more than 20% because you don't need it. We probably push through 2%, if that, right now. You literally look at your cash file, process your cash file, and if you've got an oddball, then you go and get the remit and push it through. You absolutely do not need a remit. And I can say that hand on heart, but yeah, definitely 4 years ago, I'd have said, no way, give me a remit.
And so have you convinced your colleagues in North America around the need for remittances?
We're getting there. They've only just gone live last Wednesday, actually. So yeah, I kind of tying their remits in a bag, not letting them have them. So yeah, we are getting there. But I guess it's a big change, isn't it? You kind of get used to processing in a particular way, and somebody presents you with this scenario that seems too good to be true. So it's just a little bit of hand holding, I would say, that we're doing. But I certainly think they will see the way forward. We've shown them how we do it here. You can go through 150 payments in 20 minutes, no remits required at all. So they're at the start of the intelligence building, but yeah, it's going well.
So just going back to implementing the solution, what's it like for a user, a new person coming into the process, learning how to use the cash application solution?
We had a complete cynic at the start, again, because she was massively opposed to change, didn't want to be using the product at all. So for us, it was important to engage her in all the workshops that we were having, and it was important to get her to do the testing, and get her to have a voice in terms of what she felt looked right and what didn't look right. So again, I just think as a project, I mean, I've done this on a lot of them. I think you have to involve the users. I mean, the users love it, and the users, and even Bangalore, you know, my team out there, they would never ever want to go back any other way. And for them, an application of this kind was the first that they'd ever seen in Bangalore. So a lot of companies that are out there don't have it. And I know for sure if they ever, I mean, they've been a brilliant resource, actually. I mean, high turnover in Bangalore, but they've been with us for 3 years. And they would probably want to take it with them. I can't see either of my guys wanting to work anywhere now where they haven't got that element of automation. We're bringing in Middle East cash into Bangalore, and that is at the moment a manual process. So our vision is to look at bringing everybody on board, because to have to work a manual process when you've got an automated process, it doesn't make sense. So again, looking at it from a SNC Atkins worldwide point of view, then you know this is an important application, I think, for all of us.
Great, thank you. So just to summarise and to conclude, what would be your kind of key points from the implementation of the cash application solution?
I would, in terms of AR software, this is an absolute no-brainer. It completely pays for itself. Any demo I've ever given, people have been completely wowed by it. Just because your cash is on so quickly with little or no effort. So you don't have to be an experienced cash allocator of 10 years. You could pretty much train somebody on this within a week, you know, that's got no background, AR background at all. Yeah, so it just pays for itself. It's just absolutely the way forward. I could never understand why somebody would not have this application, because it just does everything for you. And the collections team love it. You know, they love the visibility. They feel like they've got more control. They've got more information at the tip of their fingers. So, yeah.
I always say that, you know, if you're looking to improve your accounts receivable process, the cash application one is often overlooked, and yet it's the cornerstone, because as you say, the team needs that visibility and control and assurance of that, having that up-to-date position. So completely agree with you. Tracy, it's been great talking to you today, and thank you very much for your time, and wish you all the best as you roll out globally with SNC, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the control panel, and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. It's great that you've joined us, and we look forward to seeing you again at future events. Thank you very much.